while I've debated like a lot at the university level, I have participated in a lot of like school tournaments as well, wherein I've judged a lot of school kids at WSTC level. So that's a brief intro about my experience. I'll start with the sharing of my screen for the session. Okay. And in case you have any doubts in between the session, feel free to like put it in the chat box. As we go further, I'm gonna like pause in between and probably look at the chat box to clear out if there are any doubts. So after every like small briefs and small parts that I have over the session, we'll take a short break and look over the questions. I'm also hoping that you can see my screen. In case you can't, like feel free to put it in the chat as well. Okay, so framing and characterization, I think, is one of the most important and fundamental part of like the debate arguments that you're probably going to make. Because the frame and the way that you characterize your argument often act as a building block to the analysis that you're going to give ahead. It's like the base and the roots of your argument. So if your base and root are really strong, that means the tree that's going to come out, or like the analysis or impacts that are going to come out of your arguments, are also going to be strong enough that the other side finds it difficult to beat them or finds it difficult to rebut them at the very best. But who has the responsibility of framing and characterizing? The responsibility of framing and characterizing is of the first speaker. Thereby, it becomes a major component and a very important component of the first speakers as well. Thereby, the way that you frame your first speeches or the way that you structure your first speeches become really, really crucial. So these are a few things that I'm going to talk about in my session. The first thing I'm going to talk about is what is framing and characterization? What are the key areas that you probably should keep in mind when you're trying to frame your argument or characterize certain things within your argument? What are the key questions that you should ask yourself while doing that, especially when they are impromptu rounds and when you don't have like prepared motion, how to think along like different lines of argumentation or different lines to be able to frame arguments in a very, very secure and solid way so that it becomes less perverse to say rebuttals. The second thing I'm going to talk about is how do you visualize a world? Because oftentimes you're going to hear from judges saying that we don't understand what your world looks like. What is it that you're trying to say? So that visualization or like a picture building or like painting a picture becomes really important in first speeches. So this is something which I'm going to briefly touch upon. The next thing I'm going to talk about is modeling, which becomes really modeling and like counterfactual become really crucial in motions which are phrased as THW, which is this house would or this house regrets. Or in such kind of motions, it's important that you give a model and counterfactual. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about is case push in terms of how can you efficiently talk about different things and talk about all the arguments that you have and cover it in the limited time frame that you generally have. Okay. Fine. So the first thing that becomes really important for first speakers, especially in impromptu rounds, is how you are making your case. How are you thinking of arguments? And if you're able to think of arguments in a structured manner, and if you have like a speech which is very, very structured, then you can also deliver a speech which is going to be structured in a way that it gets you points not only in the content part of it, but also in the style part of it, given that style is a very important component in terms of marking of WSTC. So the first thing is that when you are delivering like a first speech and when you have to frame certain things or characterize certain things, the first thing that you ask yourself is what is it that the motion wants me to do at the end of the day? What is it that I need to necessarily talk about in this debate argument or in my speech to be able to like deal with the burdens? What is burden? It's nothing but like certain kind of expectation that the motion places onto you. For example, you would have heard that when there's a this house regrets motion, that means that you have to tell me why the thing we are regretting is a bad thing and it has led to bad consequences in the society. And on a comparative, things can be much, much better. So that's nothing but a burden. That's an expectation the motion has placed on you with the way that it is framed. So the framing of the debate often changes with the way the motions are framed and the different way different motion types are. Thereby, it's really important that you are very, very clear with the kind of burden that the motion places onto you. For example, when you have a motion like this house regrets the global dependence of dollar, which is US dollar, and we have to go ahead and say that the global dependence on US dollar is a bad thing. So what is it that I need to talk about? I need to talk about that global dependence on US dollar needs to be regretted, i.e., this is something which has led to bad consequences. If this is what is the expectation out of me, especially as the first speaker, because I have to deliver a case, I think of myself, then I need to paint a picture that the world is really bad if there's a global dependence on the dollar. Thereby, I need to frame it in a way or characterize in a way wherein I prove that there are negative things happening in the society as a consequence of those things. So when I think of the motion, I think what is it that is an expectation onto me as a consequence of the motion. Once I know what the expectation is, then I think of how can I tell that this expectation is really important or really true within the society by giving characterization or by going ahead and building a world or telling that this is what the world looks like by giving instances, by giving examples, by giving that these are the things which are happening in the world as a consequence of the motion at hand. So if I have to say that the global dependence on dollar is a bad thing, I have to go ahead and say that the world is necessarily going through a downturn or a turmoil, which is why global dependence is bad. For example, I can say that since there's so much dependence on US dollar, that means that smaller countries oftentimes don't have a lot of power on themselves because they are dependent on US dollar. But second, lot of dependence means that you have to rely on them too much, and if they fail you also have to face a consequence of it. So I'm trying to paint a picture in the world that this is something which is really, really bad. Or I can simply say that the leader who controls US right now is probably not very stable in terms of the policy that he's coming with. Thereby the things that it, like thereby this reliance is a bad thing and the world is probably becoming more and more unstable because of this global dependence. So I'm trying to paint a picture in front of like the judges that this motion needs to be like regretted primarily because the world is really moving towards a bad scenario or moving towards a negative picture if you don't go ahead and regret it and if this continues in the world. So I have to intuitively or I have to like tell the judges that this is what the world is essentially looking like in the motion that is at hand. But the second thing then, what is it that I like when I am making like arguments or when I am trying to prep the case with my teammates, I'm obviously going to think of multiple arguments as well. But those arguments oftentimes need to have a context to before they are established. For example, oftentimes you would have things in the motion which are very, very complex terms or which an average reasonable voter, which the judge is, might not understand. So you would have to explain those terms in general. So what is global dependence? I don't know that global dependence can be in terms of economy, can be in terms of trade, can be in terms of military, can be in terms of international relations or political power. What is it that the global dependence is that you want to regret? So you have to tell the judge this is what the global dependence mean and this is what it looks like. So if I want to talk about only economic arguments in my like speech, or if I want to go ahead and talk about only say international relations and military relations, I can then go ahead and talk about that this global dependence on dollar often impacts or often creates a ripple effect on the international relations of the countries as well. Because if you are not dependent on dollar or if you are a competitor of dollar, then that would mean that you are seen as an enemy of USA of at times. Or if you are like reliant on dollar, that means that you are like to a certain extent become subordinate to dollar because your economy or your country is reliant on the way US functions. So I'm trying to build a picture on what this global dependence look like. So the key thing that you have to remember for like characterizing or framing arguments is that first you go ahead and read the motion and you see if there are any key terms that needs to be explained. You don't have to explain each and every term. You don't have to give a textbook dictionary or like a dictionary reference or definition of every term. You just have to explain it in like a layman language or in a simpler terms that an average person can probably understand. So here, you don't have to explain what dollar is because an average paper reading person would know what dollar is, right? But if you explain global dependence, then that would probably be better because you're able to clarify a lot of things from the first hand. The best thing that you can do as first speaker is to clear things really like well. If you're able to clarify things as a first speaker really well, it becomes easier for your subsequent speakers to probably focus on their roles and not focus on rebuilding or talking about the same thing that you had to talk about. So thereby it becomes really important that you clearly define or clearly explain what the key terms are in the motion. The second thing that you then go ahead and think about is that what is the burden that we earlier talked about? What is it that it's expected out of me? How can I explain that world better? Then you give out an explanation of what that world could look like in your side of the house by like again by explaining what the global like dependence can probably affect, how it can affect different countries. So explaining things and explaining the world is the second step that you probably look at. The third step then you can look at in framing and characterization is probably to see your arguments. So you might have thought about different arguments when you are making your case. You might have an argument like, oh, XYZ like improves the economy of the country, or XYZ is bad because it means that human choice is affected. There can be different motion and there can be different arguments that you are making. So sometimes you would want to explain what that world would look like or what that argument that you're talking about, where does it stem from? What is the premise of it? So those premise has to be explained in terms of a frame. So for example, let's say there's a motion about Indonesia and Indonesia's environmental energy, or like where should Indonesia invest for their energy requirement. So if you have to say that Indonesia should invest in renewable energy requirement instead of like investing in industrial development, etc. So why do you say that you have to invest in renewable energy? You have to explain and give context to it. And if you give context, then it strengthens your argument. So you can say that you can invest in hydro energy and you can invest in solar energy, etc., etc. But if you lay down the context and say that Indonesia is a group of multiple islands, that means that you're surrounded by water, thereby you have abundance of like hydro energy available. But second, you also get a lot of sunlight, thereby you can have a lot of solar energy, and you are multiple islands and every island has its own unique geographical benefit that they generally have with respect to minerals, etc. So what you are doing is you are laying down the context of proving why renewable energy investment is the best thing for Indonesia, given the where it is situated or the way that it is. So that context building is nothing but characterizing and framing the world in a way that it makes you a step closer to your win and a step closer to the impact that you are. So this is what you have to think. You have to think on three layers to like see what needs to be characterized. The first layer is, I'm repeating again, to look for key terms that need to be defined. The second layer you move to is like what the motion burden is, and is there something that I can do to explain that world better? If I'm able to explain the world better, does it mean that it would improve or increase the gravitas of the motion or gravitas of my side? Will it make it much more severe and much more like something which needs to be paid more attention to? Then you go for it. And the third thing that you do is you look for an argument and see, can I give some context to that argument? And be very, very careful when you characterize. Because one thing really happens when you're trying to characterize, oftentimes you get so much swayed in it that you end up spending a lot of time characterizing, and you waste your time that you have to like spend on explaining your argument or giving analysis. At the end of the day, your analysis or the impact or the benefit or harm that you show is going to make your win or lose debates. But characterization often act as a catalyst. It's a supporter to your argument, but that support has to be there for an argument to function. But your support can't overshadow your argument. So you have to be very crucial in terms of the time that you spend characterizing. Don't spend too much time. Don't spend like 6 minutes just building the world and explaining the world, that you just have like a few minutes left to explain your argument. Just be very careful that you spend like little time, but you say things very efficiently and in a crisp manner, that you're able to explain things in a really, really good way. So these are a few things that you keep in mind to figure out what needs to be characterized. Because the first step is to figuring out what needs to be characterized. Then you move forward to how to characterize things. This is just like one small insight that can probably help you deliver first speeches really better and make your framing and framing and characterization of your arguments really like flawless in a way. So often, like since WSDC gives a lot of credence to the way that you speak and the style that you have, it's oftentimes important that your first 10-20 seconds of your speech are so captivating that the judge wants to hear you. And that can only happen when you have a really solid and a crisp start to your speech. And that crisp start can be something which summarizes what you are going to talk about, or can be something which is an analogy of what you're going to talk about, or can be a simple quote that gets linked. But it doesn't have to be something which is very absurd. It has to create some linkage to the arguments that you're going to talk about, or to the impacts that you're going to talk about. So all of this is something which you can very concisely present in the first 10-15 seconds of your speech. Then you move into your framing, and then you move into arguments. And when you move into your arguments, you try to make it very structured, because when you have a structured speech, that means that your style improves significantly instead of you trying to hop around arguments. So what happen oftentimes, especially when we are beginning, is that we say certain things, then we move to like the other argument, then we come back to the same argument, and then we move to the third argument. So there's a lot of back and forth that happens in the initial times, and it becomes really difficult for us to track the debate. But especially for a judge, they see that you are trying to repeat a lot of things. When there's a lot of repetition, that means that there's less content that you can present, because half of the content is repeated, and the judge is not going to write things that you have already talked about. So there's no benefit that you can attain out of it. The only benefit is the more valid things that we are talking about, and us not repeating things. And the only way that it can happen is if your speech is very structured, or if your speech follows a flow that makes it easy for you to follow it. So this is something which probably if you are in 11th or 12th, you might relate to. This is nothing but just a format to what you learn in your English, which is note making. And if you're younger than 11 and 12, you'd probably learn this sooner. But this is nothing. You make a point, then you make sub points out of it. So it becomes easier for you to explain things. But also when you're reading your speech, it becomes easier for you to look at it as well. So just try to assume one debater has a lot of things written on their piece of paper versus somebody who has a lot of structured notes, like pointer notes. It becomes easier for you to follow if you are pointer notes in comparison to somebody who has things written all over their page. The more structured your notes are, the better your speech is going to be. But also, you can here highlight what your framing is, or what your characterization is. And then you can say that this is my argument. So it becomes easier for you to then follow through and segue through and tell the judge as well, and say that this is the frame of my argument, XYZ, moving on to my argument now. So what this structure does is it helps you in terms of delivering your speech better as well. But the second thing is, a lot of debaters do it, and this might work for you, might not work for you. You can probably look at this as an advice, is that since they feel that they might end up spending a lot of time on characterization or an argument, they write smaller timestamps against it. So let's say I have like one full page of characterization that I have to talk about, but I also have to make sure that I don't spend a lot of time. So I probably write like 2 minutes at the end of it. And I make sure that when I'm looking at when I have my timer in front of me and I can get reminded of it, that I have to complete and wrap it up under 2 minutes. And then I have to move on to my next argument. So this structure can probably act as a reminder as well for you that when do you have to move into next argument, or by under what time you have to try to complete your argument, so that you become much more efficient in terms of the argument completion and in terms of delivering your speech as well. Okay, so the first step for characterization is something which we understood in terms of what needs to be characterized. But the second thing that we have to now see is how to characterize things and what is world building and how to build the world. So there are a few things that we ask ourselves when we have to characterize certain things. The first thing that we ask ourselves, does it add any value to the debate? If it does, then we talk about it. If it does not, then we don't. For example, if there's a motion about, let's say, that a black kid in America has two options. The first option is to probably go to a university which has a lot of black kids as well. So you are closer to your community and you have a lot of community representation. You also have teachers who understand the community, versus a school which is very famous, like an Ivy League school, but it has very little representation. You might not find people from your community. Your teacher might not understand your struggles, etc. So these are the two options that the kid has. And this is the motion. Gov has to say that you go to a school which has a lot of black kids. Op has to say that you go to a school which is very prestigious, but you don't have a lot of representation or your community kids from there. So if I talk about that in USA, there's a lot of problem about racism, and I spent 3 minutes talking about racism, is it going to add any value to my debate? Maybe not, because will OP say that no, racism doesn't exist? Will OP say it's not a problem in US? They won't, because it's very obvious to everybody that racism is a problem. And we are going to talk about where it's going to be less or more, or where it can be tackled better on either side of the house. So it's not strategic or it's not wise for you to spend 3 minutes talking about racism. The very best that you can do is to spend like 20 seconds or 30 seconds saying that, oh, racism is a problem in US and it's very severe. Thereby, we have to be closer to our community. At max, you do is like a 20-second explanation of what the situation of racism is within like that particular country, instead of spending like 3 minutes explaining Black rights movement or explaining how big the problem is, because nobody is going to like question it. Nobody's going to say that is not true. Insofar as that is the case, I don't talk about it. But if there's certain things that is probably going to add value to it, for example, if I have to explain why community matters like a lot to a kid in school versus like a very good faculty, then I talk about it. Because obviously the other side might say that prestigious schools are more important than community. So this is something which I can talk about instead of certain things that the other side is going to agree on. The second question that I ask myself, is it helping me prove the burden that I have? Is it helping me prove anything that I am talking about? If it is, then you talk about it. For example, if you talk like in the same motion, if you talk about Black rights movement, will it help you win debate? No, because you as a kid are not going to do anything to solve like racism within that particular country. You're just going to school. You are making a small choice. Will it solve the movement? Will it help the movement? It would not. So if you spend a lot of time talking about the political movement and the social movement, it might not help you. Thereby, you should not talk about it. So you look for arguments, or you look for things or cues or questions in your framing, if it's going to help you win or not, or if it's going to help you prove the argument that you have or not. The third thing that you ask yourself is it contentious? Which means, is the other side going to disagree on it? If they are going to disagree on it, and if you think that can help you win the debate or prove the burden as well, you go for it. You should not shy away from the fact that the other side might have a disagreement to it, primarily because the disagreement might just be because the other side has to choose certain might have to choose other things. For example, in the same case, if you talk about that a community matters, whoever is annotating, please don't. Community matters more than prestigious teachers or prestigious names. Then you talk about it, because the other side is obviously going to say that prestigious names is something which matters more. Thereby, this contention often just means that you are trying to serve different sides, or you are just trying to have like different opinions on different things. So thereby, even if it can be contentious, you should still talk about it if it's going to help you win this debate. The fourth thing that you ask yourself is, will the other team just agree with it? If they are going to agree with it, then you don't talk about it. For example, if you say that racism means when you go ahead and discriminate people against their race, it's a bad thing, thereby you should not do it, and thus we believe that you should go to a college which has more people from your community. Will the other side disagree? Will the other side disagree with what racism is? They are not going to do that. Did it add any value to you? No, it did not, because you just gave an explanation or a definition of what racism is, but that did not help you in your arguments, or that did not help you in terms of what you're trying to explain. Thereby, you should not waste your time. So, debating is very, very strategic. Debating is about how you can utilize your time in a way that you can talk about most important things and that you can explain things the best. Again, I'm repeating, while framing and characterization are really important, it should not come at the expense or come at the cost of your arguments or your impact. It has to support them. It does not have to overshadow. This is something which you have to then think about. The last question that you have to ask, and this is something which needs to be the most prelim question that you ask yourself, and it's very important, that would an average reasonable voter have access to this information? Would a person know what US dollar is even if I don't explain them? Yes, they would. Then should I give them definition of what US dollar is? I should not. So in the previous motion of global dependence on US dollar, I would not give an explanation or characterization or like a definition of what US dollar is. I would not say it's the legal tender or legal currency of United States of America, because the judge would know it. Thereby, I should not waste my time on explaining what it is. Rather, I should spend more time in explaining things better. So these are the second step for characterization and framing, i.e., how do you characterize and frame certain things? What do I mean by world building? World building is nothing but giving certain picture to what the world looks like. But before I go into that, I'll see if there are any questions. Okay, somebody is asking what are mechanisms. I might have used some debating lingos. In case you don't understand any, feel free to text in the chat box. A mechanism is nothing, but mechanism is a way to explain your argument or analysis, you can say. So for example, if I am saying that Indonesia should invest in more renewable energy, and my argument is that this is something which is good because it will save them a lot of money. So how do I explain that it saves them money? I can say that it's very easily accessible to them because it's nearby to them. So they don't have to get it or buy it from other countries. Second, I can say that they can have less cost in transportation as well, because you don't have to transport things. It's available on your own island. So thereby you save money that way. So the way that I'm explaining, or the arguments that I'm giving, or analysis that I'm giving to explain why it saves money, is nothing but known as mechanisms in debating. So I gave you two mechanisms. The first was to explain that you don't have to buy it from other countries. It's locally available, so it saves money. The second is every island can have their own specialized energy, i.e. some island might have volcanoes, so you can have heat there. Some islands might have more wind, so you can have wind energy. That means that you don't have to transport between islands, so you save money that way. So I give you two ways to explain why you save money if you Indonesia invest in renewable energy. So these two ways were nothing but known as mechanisms. So somebody asked in an 8-minute speech, what is the golden time to end it? 7 minutes or 7:30? Ideally, you should speak for 8 minutes. It's absolutely fine. If you speak for 8 minutes, nobody's going to stop you. But if you end before that as well, that's fine. But you should try and cover up like the stipulated time that's given to you. Okay, somebody is asking, how do you think we should utilize facts into our speeches as like sort of support? Also, in the impromptu rounds, how do we prepare without the use of electronic devices? Okay, so first, in terms of how to utilize facts. So if you know a fact about a country and you feel that is something which will strengthen the argument that you have given and will make it more persuasive or stronger because you are giving more factual analysis to it, then you give it as an analysis, like a way to explain it. So when I'm explaining that Indonesia is better for renewable energy or should invest in renewable energy, I'm giving a fact that Indonesia has access to wind energy because there are a lot of winds that flow through the islands or tropical regions that way. So this is a fact that is. This is not any logical argument there. Or if I say that Indonesia is probably closer to XYZ degree of equator and thereby it gets more sunlight or certain things like that, if I explain something like that, this is a fact. So I can use this as a means to explain my argument or explain my benefit or harm. So try to incorporate it that way. So for example, you have to say that maybe XYZ country should not take help from China because China gives a lot of loans and then they put you in debt trap. This is what they have been doing with a lot of African countries. This is what they did with Sri Lanka as well by taking over their port. So if I say this is a fact. So I can use this as a means to explain my argument that you should not invest with China. And I give you example that this has happened with other countries in the past and it has had bad consequences, thereby you should not do it. So this is one way for you to explain. How do you how do you use it when you have impromptu rounds? So you cannot use electronic devices. What you can do is you should develop a habit of reading about different things, about different countries, what is happening around the world, what is happening in the country. So when you start reading about those things, you'll start like having those things at the back of your mind. You don't have to like cram things up or like memorize certain things like you do for exams. It's just that slowly and gradually, when you read more and more general knowledge and when you read about different things or when you debate also more, you'll start memorizing that there are certain things that happen in the world or there are certain things or certain way that certain actors behave. So you'll keep on remembering those things as you go forward. So you would not require electronic device at all. You would not miss the electronic device only. Somebody asked, how much time should we save for POIs? You should try to wrap up your POI in like 15 seconds and try to be very, very crisp so that the other speaker is also able to understand what you are trying to say and the judge also has take note of what you're trying to say. So somebody saying, is world building basically giving an example to the voters or judges of an image so that they can relate to the motion? Yes, it is. So if you don't have, like, there can be instances wherein you don't have examples. So how do you build the world? You just try to paint a picture. So when you are probably trying to explain a movie to somebody, you say that there are more people who are helpful in for example, there's a hypothetical motion that there's XYZ machine, and if you use that machine, everybody becomes happy, nobody is sad. So you try to explain people what it would look like for you to use a machine. That means that every time that you are sad, you would use this machine and you would forget about things that worried you and you would always be happy in this world. So I'm not doing anything, I'm just giving you or painting a picture in front of you that this is what my world would look like if you have this motion pass, or if this is what happens in reality, this is what it would look like. So it's just an explanation, building an image in front of the judges. You can use an example to support it, but just in case you don't have an example, you can say that in plain words as well, what the world can look like. Somebody's asking about what about Prime Minister or LO? Okay, I think this was in accordance to the reply speech. The reply speech can be given by first speaker or the second speaker. So somebody is saying, would having a shorter speech, say 6-7 minutes, affect the overall grading in the judge's eyes? So oftentimes there are different criteria that judges use to mark you, which is style, the way that you say things, and the things that you manner, matter, method. So these are the things that judges would look at. If you are able to cover, say, good content in like 7 minutes as well, that should not affect your scores a lot. But slowly and slowly, as you practice, you would realize that even the time that is given to you would be less and you would want to have more time. So do not worry about the fact that this is a lot of time and you might not be able to cover your speeches. As you practice, you would have like a habit of being able to cover it. Okay, so somebody's asking, what do judges prefer? An introduction that's short and catchy or one that's long and detailed? So, for example, that you spend like a lot of time, say 1 minute, just giving an introduction, and then you move into framing. I'm saying introduction is different from framing and characterization. So if you give like a lot 1 minute introduction, then you move into framing and characterization, that might not be a very strategic thing because the judge might be looking for something to like write, something to understand what you're going to talk about in this debate. So I personally would suggest, like, different judges can have different opinions, but I would personally suggest that keep your introduction like short, move into then framing and characterization, because introduction is just a means to get attention of the judges and be more persuasive in the way that you speak. It is not the content or the meat of the speech that you have. Are we allowed to have physical notes for impromptu rounds? Yes, you can have a piece of paper through which you can, wherein you can write your notes and then you can refer to it while speaking. So somebody is asking, if their speeches are around 7 minutes, should they add more content considering POIs and rebuttals? That depends on what speaker role do you go to. So for example, if you are the first speaker, then you just have to deliver out the speech. Then you should cover your speech in the stipulated time of 8 minutes. But if you are like a second speaker or a third speaker, then you would like spend time in giving rebuttals as well. So you would have to take into consideration that some time has to be devoted in terms of rebutting arguments as well. So you have to like take that into consideration. So I'll take one last question, then we'll move into the next part, and then we'll come back to questions. Somebody is saying, can you listen to the POI and decide if you want to take it or not? No. So if you take a POI, you'll have to listen what the question is. You can choose to answer it or not. The way that you answer might affect your like speech score. So if you give a very good answer and that led to a concession on the other side, or like if you gave an answer that strengthened your case, that might just help your argument or your team as altogether. But if you choose to say not, and like even after listening you are like moving on, or my next speaker will answer this POI, that does not mean you will get negative score. You don't get -1 for that, but it does not seem very strategic to do it. So it's always better you give some answer, even if it's not the best answer, and your other team members can then think about that answer or think about that question, and then they can also refer back to that POI and explain that POI in their speech. Okay, so I'll move on to the next part, and then I'll quickly wrap up so that we can have like enough time for other questions. So one thing that I want to, the last thing that I want to talk about is modeling and counterfactual, since we already discussed what world building is through the question that was asked. In terms of modeling and counterfactual, so there's a stark difference between what modeling is and what counterfactual is. Counterfactuals have to be given in certain motion types. For example, if there's a motion type which is THR, this house regrets, that means that the thing that is written after this house regrets is something we are regretting, and we have to tell you that this is a bad thing in the world and the world would be better off if it existed without that thing. For example, this house regrets video games. So I'm saying that video games are bad, it had led to bad consequences for the kids, and thereby we should have a world without video games. And counterfactual is nothing, it's just an explanation of what the world without video games would look like and why is this a better world. So counterfactual is an explanation of what my new world can look like and why is it better off. So whenever you are regretting certain things, you have to explain that in a world wherein this thing did not exist, or this house regrets junk food. So in a world wherein junk food did not exist, what that world would look like and why would it be better? So I can say in a world wherein junk food did not exist, people would only eat healthy food, or people would eat only green vegetables, and then explain why is it a better thing. But I cannot say that for example, saying that this house regrets um, public transport. So I cannot say that in a world when public transport did not exist, everybody would have planes. This is my counterfactual. It's my world. I can build it anyway. So it has to be reasonable. You can't say certain things which are very unreasonable. You can't say in a world without public transport, everybody would own planes. You can't say that there would be aliens in a world like in the counterfactual. So you have to be reasonable that in a world without the thing that we are without the thing that we are regretting, what it would look like. You explain it in your first speech, and you have to be careful that you explain it well in your first speech what that counterfactual is. So you say things like for example, if the motion is this house regrets video games, so you say that the counterfactual is that in a world without video games, we would have more and more physical and outdoor games, and people would like engage in those things. So I'm very clearly explaining what my counterfactual is. And this is the role of the first speaker. So as the first speaker, you also have to very, very clearly explain what the counterfactual is. Other motion wherein you also have to explain a counterfactual is this house prefers world, wherein let's say this house prefers a world wherein people have mind reading machines, i.e. everybody can read each other's mind. So the counterfactual here is that what would the world look like when you do not have mind reading machines? Or you explain what the world would look like wherein you had mind reading machines and things like that. So this is something which you have to very clearly explain in terms of visualization, in terms of giving an example, giving an instance or anything, by painting a picture in front of the judge eyes. What is it that would entail in such a world? It does not have to be very, very minute details, but it has to have enough explanation to give an idea to the judge that, oh, this is what you are talking about, and this is what the world can look like. The second thing I'm going to talk about here is modeling, and that's probably going to be the last topic for today. What is it that is modeling? Modeling is nothing but giving an explanation on how a policy can work. So when you have this house would motions, then you have to give out a policy in terms of explanation, how things would pan out, how things would function. So you don't have to explain where would the money come from for that policy, or where the resources would come from for that policy. It's assumed you have the resources to act on it. But you have to explain how would that policy look like. For example, the motion is this house would make voting compulsory. So you don't have to say that, oh, we'll get the money from Election Commission of India to make voting compulsory. You assume that you can make voting compulsory, but how can you make it compulsory? Because when you make certain things compulsory, that means if somebody does not follow it, they get a punishment. So what happens to people who do not follow it? Because that is what like everybody is going to ask you. So you can say that our model is if somebody does not go to vote, then they will be fined, or they will have like a court case against them. Because voting is compulsory, everybody has to vote. So you give a model in terms of explanation of how will you have this policy implemented in the world that you are living in. So this is what modeling is, nothing else. Okay, coming back to questions. Somebody saying, what should be the strategy to handle POI? Should we accept or should we ignore? You should obviously accept and respond to it. And if you think that your response was not very strong, you can obviously ask your other teammates to give a response, brief response to it in their speeches by saying that, so you can say that the POI that Prime Minister asked me, a prime minister asked my previous speaker, we can also act on this way, or this is the response to it. That's absolutely fine. Okay, somebody saying for impromptu motions, what to do if you are not aware about the motion. So for impromptu motion, if you think that you do not know certain things, there would obviously be ways to deal with that motion. You ask yourself certain questions. One, if this happens, what would be the benefit of it? Because obviously the CA team will make sure that they don't make motions which are going to be out of the ambit of your understanding. So you ask yourself, is there a benefit of this motion or not? If you can see a benefit, then you talk about that benefit. If you see a harm and you have to negate it, then you talk about that harm. You ask, if will the world be a good place to live in, or will it be a good thing if you have this in place? If it's yes, and then you talk about it. If no, then you talk about it. So you ask yourself certain key questions when you look at an impromptu motion, and then you think about it, and then you'll be able to come up with certain things. Even if you're able to come up with one or two benefits, that's fine. Then you try to think about why that, how do you reach that benefit? Why is this a good benefit? Why is it an important benefit? So you try revolving your speech around that benefit and try deconstructing the other side. So if you have, say, one benefit, you can still win. If you try to take down the harms of the other side or take down what the other side is saying, then you focus more on rebuttals. So you try to be strategic that way. If you don't have a lot of matter, you go destructive and you attack the other team by rebutting them and trying to take down their arguments. If we have four members, then does the fourth speaker say the reply speech? No, only three members participate every round. You can choose to select which are the three members out of the lot, but only three people like participate. Reply speech cannot be given by the third speaker. Are notes allowed during prepared rounds? Yes, they are allowed during prepared rounds. Okay, you should not keep aside time for like POI, because POI is a team might not ask you a POI, but for rebuttals you should have some time. You should see in your prepared speech what is it which is very important and what is it which is less important and which is the least important, so that if you have to forego certain arguments and you have to rebut certain things, you try to focus on rebuttals and probably not talk about the least important thing. So if you have some prioritization that way, that might just help you. Okay. Um, no, modeling and counterfactuals are not same. Modeling is something which is applicable only in policy motions, motions which are this house would do something, this house would have certain policy, like this house would make voting compulsory. Only in certain motions you have modeling, but counterfactuals are an explanation of what the new world would look like this house regrets motion or this house prefers motion. This house regrets motion, when you regret something, you have to say that in a world wherein this thing did not exist, what it would look like is what the counterfactual is. So for you to pass POIs to other teammates, you cannot say that like the other teammate cannot interrupt your speech and get up in between and talk about it. You can say that my second speaker will explain this more. So your second speaker, when they have their own speech, they can then address the POI. That is absolutely fine, but just don't interrupt in each other's speech. Don't be like, my second speaker will answer and then the second speaker gets up and starts saying. Don't do that. But you can say that my second speaker will say this, and the next speaker in their speech, they can spend time on the POI. Okay, somebody saying what to do if you agree with the other side and you don't have rebuttals. So see, every side is going to say some things which are true, and you cannot, and you just can't be like this is false. You cannot, every time you can't say that this is a false thing. So in certain instances, what you can, like, obviously there's going to be a detailed session on rebuttals as well, and that session might be much more detailed in explaining how to deal with such situations. But like very briefly, what you can do is try to say that this thing is less important. So let's say op says that it leads to more people getting jobs, but you say that it leads to more safety, and opposition's argument is correct, and you are like, yeah, more jobs, people will get more jobs. I don't know why, how do I deal with it? You can say that safety is more important than jobs. You can say that sure, jobs are a good thing, but if people are not safe, what will they do of jobs? Like, people will be scared to go to work, people might die any day, thereby we want safety more than we want jobs. So you're just saying that they might be true, but they're less important than us. Me are more important than them. So this is one way for you to deal with such a situation. Mm. Your points are not deducted if you refer to the pages while speaking. How many notes can you carry? Like as many as you want, that's fine. Should we carry individual timers? I think there's a timer that would be available to you. Like there'll be a screen with the timer on so that the judges can refer, the speakers can refer. You would not require to have a timer with you. I think there would be a screen to have a timer. Um, okay, so if there are Okay, so if there are any last questions, I'll take that. If not, I'll just summarize what the session has been so far. So, for a good reply speech, obviously you cannot bring in new content even if you really want to. What you can do is try to highlight what your like side did, what are the arguments that you talked about, and what the other side did not talk about. So, one way to make your reply speech really good is to highlight what the other side did not say. So, for example, you had a point about this. It leads to cost saving, but the other side did not rebut it. So you can highlight like judge note that we talked about how it leads to cost saving for xyz things, but the other side had no response or no rebuttal to it, thereby this should stand for you. So you are just highlighting that the other side was inefficient because they did not rebut our arguments and they did not respond to it, but we gave you this benefit. So this is one way for you to highlight it in your reply speech, very like uh in a very smart way. Yes, you can take notes during impromptu rounds. um, yes, you can pass your POI to the other teammate by saying, my teammate will answer this POI, but your teammate cannot get up in between and answer the POI. They have to wait for their speech. When their speech is, they can talk about that POI there and then, but just don't interrupt each other's speech. Don't get up in between each other's speeches. Okay, perfect. So, since we don't have more questions, I'll just quickly summarize what we discussed so far. So, we discussed three things. The first thing that we discussed is what to characterize. You look for three cues. The first thing that you look for is, are there any key terms that I need to explain? Then you look for what is expected out of me in this motion. Can I explain things better by giving a world building or like some explanation of what the world is or what the situation in the world is? The third thing you see is that in your argument, is there a way for me to explain my argument better by giving a world of what the world looks like or giving some instances of facts to establish the context of the world? The second thing that we learned is, how do we characterize? We ask ourselves a few questions. Is it important? Is it going to make us win? Is it something which the other side is going to agree on? Is it a common knowledge? Is it something which the average voter would know or not? So we look at these few key questions to understand how do we characterize certain thing or how much time we have to spend in characterization of certain things. The last thing that we learned here was about modeling and counterfactual. In what kind of motions are these? Do you have to model and give a counterfactual? What is the way that you can do it, and why? Like, what are the things that you would probably need to answer while answering, like while building a counterfactual or while building a model per se? Perfect. So this is all from my end. Um, for any logistics related question, you can reach out to the Ideal team. Hopefully, looking forward to seeing you all in Jaipur soon.